So for a long time on the Young Turks, I've been talking about what I call the great unraveling. For years and years, that's the term I've been using. And I was worried that the financial markets were going to at some point collapse because they incentivize too much risk taking, that we've got a house of cards in terms of the economy, and that the systemic corruption in the U.S., let alone the rest of the world, was going to lead to a revolt against the establishment, some of which would be very positive, some of which would not be great, but that the financial collapse brought on by the risk-taking would lead to a series of things happening that the world has yet to see and experience, at least for generations. And so my generation didn't live through World War I or World War II, and we live a fairly comfortable life. And so with all of its downsides, it's still a fairly good time to be alive. Life expectancy has more than doubled over the last 200 years, et cetera. But we think it can never change. And my thesis has been that, oh no, change always comes. That is the one constant, as everybody knows. And that when it comes, it might come in a much larger dose than we expect. Because when you put together what I believe is the financial collapse yet to come, I'm not even talking about the Great Recession. I think one that is much, much larger will be at hand. I think that it largely will affect the Federal Reserve. And once you question the Federal Reserve, then the entire world economic system gets questioned, and I think it will. And on top of that, we've got climate change that is leading to not just severe weather, but severe weather that is affecting geopolitics throughout the world. And then you've got the Arab Spring, and then you've got all these other factors at play that are causing us, especially the revolt against the establishment, causing instability. And then at some point, I think that instability will hit a tipping point and will become much larger than anyone ever expected. Now, if you've been watching the Young Turks for years, you've heard me say this many times. Well, today, at least, we have standard American politician, a guy who ran for president for the Republican nomination, John McCain, beginning to use the same words. Now, partly in relationship to what Donald Trump is doing with Russia, but I think that it relates to the broader picture as well. Let's watch.
This is the sign of a possible unraveling of the world order that was established after World War II, which has made one of the most peaceful periods in the history of the world. We're starting to see that the strains and the unraveling of it, and that is because of an absolute failure of American leadership.
So now he's criticizing Obama as well as Trump on our relationship with Russia there. Look, I'm not in favor of John McCain warmongering against Russia. I'm also not in favor of Russia meddling in our elections. I also don't think that releasing some emails is the same as hacking, and I don't think we should use the word hacking because that implies they hacked the vote. I think we should double check the vote, no question. In fact, we have a petition to verify the vote, tytnetwork.com/verify. Every vote in America, as well as across the world, should be verified. And the fact that we don't do that now by having independent parties check our voting system is outrageous. But there is no evidence that the Russians hacked the vote right now. And them releasing emails is not hacking. Yes, it is meddling. It doesn't mean we have to go nuclear, but we should be honest about what's going on. Now, having said all that, I don't believe that that is the great unraveling. But as McCain points out, if you have Russia meddling in U.S. elections, and then you have U.S. retaliating, and then over the weekend, China captures one of our unmanned drones, and Trump says something to the effect of they better give it back, and then turns around and says, I don't want to keep it anyway. That's Trump being Trump, but then he's questioning the one China policy. And China is furious about that. And then their state press putting out very significant, certainly statements and what could be viewed as threats against us. And if Trump, who obviously has no idea what he's doing in foreign policy, pushes China too far, what if they go to get Taiwan? Again, in our lifetimes, unthinkable. But if the unraveling has begun, and I believe it has, is it conceivable that China can just take a little jaunt across the sea and just take Taiwan? Certainly conceivable. And then what is our reaction when that happens? Let alone what is our reaction if Russia crosses into not the Ukraine, but into Estonia, which is a NATO ally. What is Trump going to do? Anybody's guess is as good as your guess, because Donald Trump doesn't know what he's going to do. And it could be no big deal. Russia, take whatever you want, which is a terrible idea. It could be, oh yeah, well, I have a bigger ego than you, Putin. Let's go to something that will lead to worse and worse consequences. And so I believe, and I said on the night of Brexit, that it has begun. The great unraveling has begun, and Brexit is the first significant step. Now, there's already right-wing parties that have won in Eastern Europe. There's significantly left-wing parties that previously wouldn't have won elections that have in Greece and other places in Europe. Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders rising like they would not have any time in my lifetime in the UK and in the US. But then Brexit turns out was dipping our toe in the water. The Trump election was us diving head in first. So the great unraveling has begun, and I believe that a lot more politicians going forward will begin to recognize that. And as always with these predictions, I hope to God I'm wrong, and none of that comes to fruition, and that we could rescue things before they do, and that is what we try to do here on the Young Turks. We try to give you warning signs and some posts so that you can see what's coming, and we tell you things ahead of time, not afterwards, so you can say, oh, okay, I get it. They told me that was going to happen, and it did happen. Maybe we should be careful about the next step. So Trump is going to lead to many different, at least smaller unravelings, but if he keeps stacking his cabinet with people who are going to basically loot the American treasury, and he's going to pile on deficits, oh, if you're a conservative, and you railed against deficits and the debt your entire life, wait till you get a load of what Trump does to it. Because he is offering trillions of dollars in tax cuts and no way to make up for it in the budget. So there's not going to be any extra revenue coming in. They're not going to cut spending anywhere near that amount. And in fact, they're thinking of spending $1 trillion in infrastructure, which I like, but then you pour all that in. You've got giant deficits. You've got worldwide conflicts. You've got climate change. And on top of that, we're going around beginning to pick fights that have very uncertain conclusions. All I'm telling you is buckle up. I told you before this election that it was going to be razor thin. It could be Clinton, it could be Trump, but brace for impact. How many times did I say that on the show? Dozens of times I said, it could be Trump, brace for impact. Well, now that impact has begun. Where it ends, no one knows. Podcast the whole 2-hour Young Turks every single day, commercial free. All-Star Tuesdays, Aggressive Progressives, Old School, Post Games, TYT Classics. You get it all with membership. Do it now. tytnetwork.com/join.